All right, next item on the agenda is the Fine Arts Survey Waiver Proposal. Kevin or Pam? Or?
Hold on one second. I just want to write my note to get that moving.
All right. Page 60.
Okay, so the next discussion item is the Fine Arts Survey Waiver Proposals. After the previous discussion at the Committee of the Whole meeting, the Board of Education instructed myself to work with the building administration to come up with some proposals for fine arts safety, or fine arts, I'm thinking life safety, fine arts survey, I'm sorry, and the graduation requirement. Based on previous discussions, the board had discussed about keeping the requirement but having some flexibility as similar to some of our other classes that allow students with multiple credits to in the fine arts to have an opportunity to waive out of the class. Pam had worked with her leadership council, and if you saw the narrative on the proposal that was submitted, the leadership council is both the building administration and department chairs. To come up with a proposal, Pam presented proposal number 1. I thought there were some inconsistencies with some of our other proposals, so we worked together with some input from the administration and developed a second proposal. So there's 2 proposals for the Board of Education to consider. I also created a summary after Pam's memo that kind of summarizes it, makes it a little easier to depict and understand. And the board can refer to that. If you're looking at an Adobe copy from previously saved, I do have a paper copy of that summary if anybody needs it. Basically, the proposal that came from the Leadership Council and Building Administration was that the students that we would leave the fine arts survey requirement in place, which I don't think the board has discussed changing that. I just wanted to talk about a waiver policy. The proposal that came forward was that a student who had earned 4 credits within one area of concentration, for example, 4 credits in music, visual arts, dance, drama, band, that these students are serious musicians, dancers, artists who have committed 4 years to refining their craft, and that they allow them some flexibility in their schedule, the ability to waive out of this course, similar to how we allow students who take 4 years of a world language to waive out of global area studies. The second component of the original proposal was that students have to attend 2 professional performances and then provide tickets of those professional performances, as well as to show proof of attendance, and then write a paper summarizing their experiences from attending those performances and meet the established criteria. The recommendation that this opportunity would be available to incoming freshmen in 2013-14. That the proficiency test would still remain available, so that if students wanted to try to use the proficiency test to get out of this requirement, to be waived from this requirement, they could still do that as well. I just had a few concerns. It does align with the 4-year requirement. You could take 4 years of a foreign language and waive out of the half a credit of fine arts, except for fine arts survey. You can't take 4 years of a foreign language and waive out of the semester of global area studies. Those requirements did not align, do not have any additional papers or other requirements that students have to complete. That was where I had some of the issues. So I went back with Pam. We looked at a couple other things. The second proposal that was recommended, for the board to consider, talked about trying to, for students who have credits in areas that are covered by the fine arts class. I did some homework again today just to make sure as I was speaking to you on this. The fine arts class covers, it's roughly a 16-week class with 4-week sessions, 3.5-week sessions in 4 areas: dance, music, the visual arts, and then the performing arts, choir, and some of those things. And what I was thinking of with the second proposal, working with Pam, is that we try to have students that have covered those components or areas in their transcript, or have taken classes in those, meeting all those different areas, would then be available to take a waiver. So for a student that had a performing arts class, a visual arts class, and one of their semesters of PE, they experienced dance, they've kind of experienced the three primary areas, that the visual, the performing, and the dance aspect of the Fine Arts Survey course, and thus that would allow them a little more flexibility in their schedule to still pursue other courses. Now, the reason I created the summary for you on the next page, on page 163, and Mary Ann has that on the overhead, it really isn't requiring that second option. Well, I'll explain the whole document. Right now, in summary, we require students a 1.0 credit or a year credit of fine arts. A semester of that has to be Fine Arts Survey. To the left is what the three options are that current students can do. They take the Fine Arts Survey class and another 0.5 of Fine Arts Survey. Mr. Walsh, I got a paper copy because I just added it today based on some of the questions.
All right, I'm sorry.
So I made paper copies if you didn't. Does anybody else on the board need that?
Is it on,
It's on board book
as of when?
today, so I did, so
What time today?
Next month.
maybe 3 o'clock, but I followed the suggestion that was made. If you add something, also have a paper copy. So there is a paper copy. So basically, the current student has three options to fulfill this requirement. You take the 0.5 Fine Arts Survey and another 0.5 in another Fine Arts class. Option 2 is you take the 0.5 Fine Arts Survey, and you can take 4 years of a world language to cover that other 0.5 requirement.
But
Option,
you still have to take the Fine Arts Survey.
I'm explaining
Right.
the current setup. This
Right,
is currently what
I
we're
just
doing.
want to understand option 2. You still have to take, option 2, you still have to take Fine Arts, or, oh, you got it there, I just didn't see the survey. I'm so sorry,
All
I
right.
didn't see that.
So
Gotta make that
option
bigger.
2 is, the other option that we currently offer is a 0.5 Fine Arts Survey, and then basically the ability to take a world language course. If you have 4 years of a world language course, you have the right to waive the other 0.5 of fine arts.
Why can you waive half of art classes, but you can't waive the Fine Arts Survey?
I don't know, I'm just reading what the current practice is. I don't know the
Okay.
historical on that.
Okay.
The third option is that you take the Fine Arts Survey Proficiency Exam, and then you complete either a 0.5 in fine arts, dance, music, band, choir, visual arts, or that 4 years of a world language. So those are the three current options in place for students. Based on,
There's one thing that I think you should add before you get to 1, if I read it correctly. If you waive, you have to go to one fine arts event and write something up about under the current policy, right?
on the
Right.
proficiency exam part?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
still
think
have
you
to
still
do
have to go
one,
one.
which you
Right.
get to pick.
Right.
But the new one is 2, and you are told what they are. Or
So
They
under
just
the
have to
fine
be-
arts proficiency exam, you have to pass the exam and then do the paper portion and the
you have to do
attendance portion?
one event and write something up about it.
Right.
Okay.
And in the first proposal, you're just doing it out of that area of concentration. So if you're for, it could be in any of the 2 other areas you want. So if you're a music student, you could go to a dance and then go to an art opening somewhere or an art show somewhere. So you're just going to 2 events outside of your area of concentration.
Pam, I got a question
Yeah.
about that proposal number 1 and criteria number 4. We heard some visitor statements tonight that got really into the heart of why this exists in the first place. How deep is number 4? Completing a paper that summarizes the experience. Is it a pass-fail that they really show a genuine interest and effect from their exposure to the arts? Or is it, I went here, is it, who reads it?
Well,
The fine
the
arts
Fine Arts
chair.
Department would read it, and in fact, there used to be a requirement in the Fine Arts Survey class that you went to certain outside events and wrote papers, so, and there's a rubric that already exists, but it would be looked at and developed, so how, what would qualify as a good paper or not, but basically, you're just trying to expose them to the other areas, because that's the idea behind the class. It's not as good as taking the class, but it's at least getting them to expose and reflect on it. And I'm sure that the assessment would be written in such, or the paper requirements would be written in such a way that would try to prod them to have a meaningful reflection on what they observed.
I would hope that that's in the paper.
Yeah, and how it would maybe connect to their primary area and what they learned about a different art genre.
We haven't established that part of the waivers, that was just part of the requirement.
Yeah, I know.
Can I explain the second option before, or does it relate to?
Let me explain what we actually.
I think we're gonna have a lot of discussion on this.
Okay.
Is that fair, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it all then discuss.
Well, the
Okay.
reason I made this chart is because originally when you read the memo, it may look as if a student, you know, one of the other proposals was that it's requiring a student to do a year and a half or 1.5 credits. And that's not necessarily the case, so that's why I broke it down. If a student took a semester of performing arts and got that experience, took a semester of visual arts and got that experience, and then as part of their PE requirement. So really, they're still requiring a year, they're still getting a year of fine arts, but they're also, in that third point, fulfilling one of their 4 credits that is required under the state for PE if they do the dance component. So that this way, you know, the thing that I got from the committee and from speaking with Pam and looking into it a little more and hearing the students speak is that it really does expose students to, you know, the 4 significant areas of the arts. So, you know, under this proposal, it would give them exposure to these 3 major areas. We don't have enough music or drama courses necessarily to provide a 4-year expertise, so that's why the top part only has music, visual arts, or dance. So really, in the second proposal, it's still completing a year of actual fine arts credit, but one semester of your PE credits would need to have a dance. You need to take a dance class.
So, my question, global studies is a .5 class,
Correct.
and you could take 4 years of language and waive out of it. Is
Correct.
global studies a lesser class than fine arts survey?
No, but I think I know where you're going.
Why wouldn't they be the same? Or PE, they could waive out a PE. Is PE, we have excellent wellness instructors who are also passionate. Is wellness a lesser class than fine arts survey? But we allow them to waive out, you know, if they're a marching band, and it's not even a 4-year requirement, it's in the year they're in marching band.
Correct.
Do we have other waivers that I don't know about?
No.
Probably.
I think I've
There's
covered
other,
them all.
there's some general types of waivers if you need you can't fit it in because you need something to get into the college you wanna go. There's some
Yes.
general,
For PE.
for PE, there's 2 general types of waivers you can get. You can go to the superintendent or the principal, I forget. And like if you can't fit something in, you can get PE waivers for 2 kind of general reasons.
To achieve a graduation requirement, you would not be able to complete graduation in a timely manner, or if you have, it's a requirement from a post-secondary institution, but not a graduation requirement. And
Yeah.
that's on a discretionary basis.
The state requirement, just to clarify for everyone, it's on the web, it's common knowledge. 1 year, the state requires 1 year. It includes art, music, foreign language, or vocational education. We learned that this school has 48 art classes, or around there, 42 vocational classes. We learned that students like to take 4 years of language if they can fit it in. All of that is in that box called fine art. So if we have global studies, where they could take 4 years of a language and waive out, I'm hard pressed to see one course over another, given everything that we as school board members, when I pull up our school report card, you know, for this school, it's on the web, it's right there, Illinois School Report Card 2012. I look at our major group, our major population, not our subpopulations. Approximately 27% of our student body is at 2, which does not meet state requirements. That's almost a third. Below standard, student work demonstrates basic knowledge and skills in the subject. Similarly, in mathematics, 27% of our student body, our main body, is below standard in mathematics and 20% in science. We've had fine arts survey. I'm not saying it's a bad class, I'm not saying eliminate it. We've had it for 17 years, and yet a third of our students are not meeting state standards. So I have information that's creating dissidence for me how valuable this course is. And if we have a student who says, I'm not going to get into college, if any of us have students that are going into engineering, we were told that if your student didn't have 4 years of math, 4 years of science, they'd have to go to junior college before they can even apply. So if a student comes and says, I've had 4 years of science, or I've had 4 years of art, or 4 years of choir, or 4 years of band, why would we make that student jump through extra hoops? You know, again, we look at the National Center of Educational Statistics. We've heard it over and over. You look at condition of education 2012, and Illinois, not Illinois, the U.S. country, compared to 65 developing countries, we have gone down in our proficiency in math and science compared to 2000 to 2009. We may have students who need to use the time. I think that we direct our students into fine arts. It's a good class. But if we get a student who comes in and says, I need that extra math class, I need to finish my world language, I think we need to have the same consistency that we do with other requirements.
What are you arguing for? Can you summarize that?
Well, I'm arguing that just like we do global studies, you know, if you do 4 years of language,
That's good.
I'm arguing that we're consistent with our waivers. Because there's just not enough hours in the day for us to have these.
So are you arguing that you prefer option 1 as is?
No,
not?
because you've got the performances and the papers. We don't require that in global studies or gym.
Okay. So you think it should be 4 credits in music, or visual arts, or dance?
Well, or option 2 without, I think any PE, I don't think we should force dance. I mean, I think, because you are meeting.
Have we, Mike, have we talked about option 2 yet? Or did we get sidetracked?
Oh, yeah, Kevin explained.
I just explained.
You just explained it. Okay, so we're in the discussion.
That's right.
Okay.
So Laura's just giving her opinion, now anybody else wants to speak?
We're not here to vote to eliminate fine arts survey, correct?
Right, we don't want to eliminate it. It's still a requirement.
Is that right, Kevin? We're-
Correct, I don't have any
That's not on the
recommendation.
board.
Right.
Okay.
Not on the table.
Now, as a family, parent, student, some families want to take fine arts survey.
Right.
The lady who came in here tonight wanted the same experience for her freshman son as she wanted for her daughter who graduated. If they, as a family, chose to take fine arts survey, even if we had the waiver, they would still get what they're asking for. Does that sound right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And the student who came here for the second time, I think he's behind the scenes somewhere,
Filming us.
He's watching you.
and hopefully his parents support him. He would like to not do the survey because he wants to take additional fine arts classes.
Correct.
So if he were to if we were to choose one of these waiver options, he would be getting what he wanted. The same way as the family who wanted their freshman son to take fine arts survey, they would be getting what they wanted.
So let's look at what Mike said,
Maybe.
those 2 options though.
Maybe.
Maybe? And
But
what
look
am I
at those 2
missing?
options and see how they address this. Which option addresses
Well,
the first one?
why does Gary say maybe?
What happens if you wanted to take 3 in music?
And not a
3
fourth?
credits in
And
music.
not a fourth?
Not a 4th.
Well, I think he would
You can't.
be someone that
To me,
would-
option 2 is you trade the survey for 2 additional fine arts course. That's all you're doing is you're rolling the dice, changing it.
That's
To
fine.
say, I'm gonna drop survey, but I gotta take 2 fine arts for option 2. That's what the trade-off is. And then you have, what you're saying also is then you gotta commit to, is 4 credit hours a commit? Is that a specialization? Is 4 the what is the threshold?
The first option was 4 hours of credits.
Why 4?
I think when that proposal came forward, that aligned with the 4 years of foreign language or 4 years of For the 4 years of foreign language, that they could either waive out a global area or another credit of fine arts.
Is that attuned to somebody wanting to become specialized in music or specialized in visual
Yeah,
arts
that's-
to go, or
In
specialized
their
in
original
dance?
proposal, it talked about the students that specialize in the concentration in the fine arts that they would be requesting for. The only concern, I think that makes sense and it's consistent with our other 4 years. The concern that I brought up with the Leadership Council proposal was the 2 additional requirements of the performances in the paper. Because we don't have those requirements for the other waivers that have 4 years of world language.
And why would you add those on if they're already focusing on the arts already?
Well, because the premise, it's coming from the premise that as some of the students talked about, and even Mr. Baum talked about, is concentration and knowledge in one area, we don't think it doesn't equate to what the class is trying to develop, which is the ability to describe and analyze and interpret and evaluate in all of those 4 areas. So it is a way to expand the students' horizon and get them at the core of what the class is, remembering that the proficiency test still exists. We're not removing that, and that is, covers the core content of the class like any proficiency test would. So it gives somebody who's already, committed to the 4 years to one of the arts, over the course of their 3.5 years, they go to these professional performances, expose themselves to the other areas of the art, and then they've equated to a little bit of what the class was trying to get at, which is exposure to the different areas and analyzing those. That's why it was added, because that's the crux of what the class is to have the exposure in an area outside of your area of concentration. So that was the thought.
You can go, John, or you want me to?
Well, just some stats on that proficiency exam. I thought we saw before, like,
Very
it's
low.
really low.
Yeah.
I mean,
Very.
it's
Which
almost
Which is
like,
very
Yeah, so
typical in
that-
most proficiency exams. The one that the state used to have for consumer economics was also about the same pass rate, so it's usually below 25%. The reason is, it's difficult to take one test that covers the content of an entire semester course. So even, that proficiency test, the one that we have, it covers sections of other tests that the students take during the semester. It's not made to be difficult, it covers just the content of the course. It's very difficult to pass that, and the same was true with the state's other tests.
The other issue with
It's
the
not easy.
proficiency exam that we did discuss in the committee, I think one of the people that spoke tonight asked a question, is that a good portion of the final, a lot of schools will use a final exam from a course, and if a student could pass the final, they're considered proficient. But it's tough in this course because a majority of or a portion of the final is performance-based. So now you have to kind of make it a paper and pencil test and a writing assessment instead of performance-based. So the student that might,
So let me say I'm a student, freshman year, I'm in band. I take foreign language. Sophomore year, I take photography, take my foreign language. Junior year, I take foreign language. And my 4th year, I take foreign language. I want to opt out. I did my trade-off 2 for 1. That's what your option 2 is. It's a trade-off 2 for 1 for a survey.
right, you would be okay to.
No, but that's not what you got proposed
No.
here.
No.
Wait,
I'd have to go and take a 3rd fine arts class.
No, you don't.
You would-
Yeah.
You
Yes,
guys-
I do.
You have to take the dance.
But
The dance and PE.
it's not a fine arts class because you have to take 4 years of PE. So part of that, one of those semesters could be considered dance.
Well, you saying taking 4 years elite, I've got 2 issues with this. The first thing is, we waive PE for band members and don't say they have to go to a Bulls game and a Bears game and write a paper about it, or do a log of it, or take a test like the students do to take a gym course PE. They have to take tests on different sports as part of their grading. And I feel like we're treating this, and again, everybody said nobody's trying to get rid of the class. We're not saying fine arts aren't bad, but if I had a professor for math and science and PE and everything in here, they'd be telling me why theirs is important and we shouldn't waive it. But we did. we waived PE. We had a short discussion about it. There's exceptions to the PE waiver that aren't being proposed here. We're saying the first one, it's a waiver. We eliminated foreign language. On the current system, if you take 4 years of foreign language, you don't have to take the second fine arts survey. But now that's off.
Second fine arts.
Fine arts, I always say. So it used to be if you took 4 years of foreign language, you only had to take fine arts survey unless you waived out of it. Now, 4 years of music is off the table. And what's my option two? Excuse me, language. What's my option two? I have to take, instead of 2 fine arts surveys, now I have to take fine arts, I have to take 3. And, you know, I'm going to guess, and I said this before, if we have Claire Bolno, who just made it to state in cross country, who's on track in cross country, she can't waive out of gym when she's not running. But we're saying that, you know, if you're in, the music people can waive out of it, and so I don't understand why it seems so inconsistent to me how we're deciding on the waivers of gym and what we're proposing here. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to guess there's a lot of athletes, just using them since they can't waive out of gym, who take 4 years of language, because I think a lot of kids do, who used to only have to take fine arts, probably still a survey, because I don't know if they take, a lot of them take athletic PE. So instead of taking athletic PE, you'd have to take dance. So to me, what we did is said, we're going to offer a waiver, but it's more difficult now to waive out of it than what we had. They can still take fine arts survey, take the music, so they're out of that, and they could still take dance and other visual arts if they want. They have that flexibility already. I don't see how option 2 made any flexibility. I mean, somebody would be better off doing the old, option 2 with the half of fine arts and the 4 world language, if they do it, and a lot of students do. And if they want to take 2 more fine arts and make 1 dance, if they can fit in, they can do it anyway. So I don't, and then if the first waiver, now you got to go to 2, events, which maybe isn't, a bad thing. Maybe that's probably a little less work, but it took language out as an option. So now, if you do 4 years of music, art, visual arts, or dance, it's very now narrowed. The same people can waive. A lot of them are the same who can waive out of gym, because if they're in the band, then they can go look at, watch 2 other kinds of events and write 2 papers on them. So I think the first option is very narrowly tailored. It's offering it to people that a lot of them fit into a group that can already have a gym waiver. And the second option, it doesn't seem like it's an advantage. You have to take more fine arts classes, and you don't get any advantage for taking music anymore.
Well, if you took like a semester of music, that counts as a fine arts, but not 4.
It doesn't count as the fine arts, so if a student takes 4 years of language and 4 years of band,
They would fall under the top.
they may have to go to summer school.
No, they would fall under the top.
They'd be under the top.
And see, the only reason
No, they wouldn't. Then they'd have to go to 2 performances, and
well, that's if the board approves that. We know there's concerns here with that.
Well, what they actually have is, right, instead of worrying about if they don't want to take the proficiency test or if they can't pass it, they could go to 2 performances. It gives them another option as a way to not have to take that extra semester class. So it actually seemed like, a nice thing to do for them. It's something that if you knew you were going to be a 4-year music student, or if you knew you were going to be a 4-year dance student, and you couldn't pass the proficiency test, it was too difficult, or you didn't want to study for it or prepare for it, you're just saying over your 3.5 years you would go to a couple of performances, and you take that half year class
the only
off
one who has the advantage now are if you're in the band, let's just say, which I assume a lot of them are, you can already waive. Now there's flexibility in the schedule, because you could already waive out of gym, and now you can waive out of fine arts. You could, I think, 2 years of gym, right? So now you have 3. If you want to, instead of taking fine arts survey, you go to 2 performances and write 2 papers, and you have 3 classes that you can take whatever you want.
That's right.
And the music, I mean, if you were in language before, you had to take fine arts or waive out, or proficiency out of it. You can't, in that situation, unless you happen to be in music too, you couldn't waive out a gym. So you got rid of one, but the difference of what it is here is, unless you're one of those music people who can already get out of gym, you have to take more courses than you did before. I don't see how that makes it more
When we thought of
flexible.
option two was
Yeah.
looking at the student who's not 4 years committed to one area, because that was looking at a student who wasn't gonna have a 4-year concentration and be in
I'm
the band
comparing
club.
a current
Yeah.
4-year language student who's not in the music program, who can right now just take one fine arts. But that same 4-year language student, if they don't want to take fine arts survey, they have to take 3 other courses. So they lose, since the fine art is equal to 1,
Right.
instead of having more flexibility, they have to take 2 more fine arts classes in their schedule. I
Right,
don't
they-
see how that's more flexible.
Well, it's different flexibility for different students. The student you're looking at right now, you're talking about the 4-year world language student in option 2, only has to take the fine art survey class.
Right.
They could they could waive out of it, or they could take another combination, which is what that other option 2 on the other side as the alternative waiver was, to give them, if they couldn't proficiency test out of it, didn't want to take it, and they had to take gym anyway, they might take dance and gym, then yeah, they have to take they'd be extra classes. But maybe they want those classes more than the fine art survey class. Maybe they're more interested in them. So it was flexibility in terms of interest.
We've made some strides in this. And if you remember what Pam and I were talking to the board about a month ago, is that we weren't even counting dance for PE. It was being counted as a fine arts credit. So kids that wanted to be have a dance emphasis were taking it as fine arts credit and still having to sign up for a PE credit. So we're still continuing to try to increase the flexibility, because PE is not even waivable for dance, which was something we were doing, and that's what we corrected. So we're trying to increase it. So the thought was, hey, you want to try ceramics, you want to try music, somewhere in your 4 years of PE, take dance,
But here,
and it kind of covers all the components of the class. That was my original thought.
I understand what you're saying, I understand what Pam's saying, but most people think of dance as a fine arts. Now, we put it in gym for various reasons, but basically, so if you're in music, visual arts, dance, we even said dance, your schedule is more flexible. If you're not, you either have to stick with the old system or you're less flexible than it was. So, but that was one of the points. The other point that I have, which actually in my mind is a bigger concern, I'm a little concerned that we had our, if I wrote his name down right, one of our community members, Joe Warner, right? And Mr. Fields came before us and said, you know, their understanding of what happened in the committee that we put together is different than what maybe we're talking about or proposing. I'm not faulting anybody because of it, because I wasn't there, and I know John and Laura put a lot of effort into doing this, but my concern is, you know, talking about this or even voting on it is, there's a disconnect for whatever reason between what some of the members that were there, including a community member, thought was talked about or agreed to, or there was a consensus in what we were told. And again, I'm not faulting people, and I've read the minutes and stuff, but my concern is, it seems like it's a good way to get input, to have an ad hoc committee, and we talked about it, and we might do another one. But if people that were putting their time into it don't feel like the presentation or what was decided or voted on or not voted on or brought to the board is different than what they did, I'm concerned if we try it again or further or for a different topic that, you know, community members or staff members will think, well, why would I do it? It's not really what's happening. So, I mean, I don't know what the right answer is, but, you know, I'd like to have people think, maybe the people were there to say, does it make sense to go back to the group and say, you know, we've got a couple people that were there who feel it's a little bit different what happened there, and I will say, I don't want to put her on the spot, but I think Pam also said maybe it was a little different last time.
Tim, I think, I don't wanna cut you off.
That's okay.
We had a teacher say nobody was asked. But yet John very specifically asked one teacher a very specific question, and she replied, I stayed up all night afraid that you would ask me that question. Remember, John?
That's right.
And so John and I made it a point that our purpose wasn't to pit teachers against teachers. There were plenty of comments in those minutes. We wanted to make sure we had enough somehow, that whole committee was not about fine arts. It was to make sure that we are getting enough requirements. We have 3 sciences, we have 3 maths, we need to go to a 4th. John has articulated about the economics. Are we doing enough in economics? It came up computer literacy. There's global studies. We waived global studies for 4 years. Then it came up with language. And the angst afterwards is there's a lot of things students have to do to prepare to get into college. What we're trying to put on, nobody ever said remove the requirement. So any student coming to RB, they're still required to take fine arts. But what happens if it doesn't fit? We allow you, if you take 4 years of language, because there's finite number of hours, to waive out of global studies. Why wouldn't that be the same?
Well, we're talking about different things. I'm
Well,
not saying you're
this,
wrong.
this
or
is about,
different.
do we allow a waiver for a requirement like we allow a waiver for another requirement?
That we talked about. My thing is that I'm concerned about whether people thought the process was the same. You understand what I'm saying, John?
Well, I think it's clear. Pam has solicited to the Leadership Council what the teachers think, and that's this proposal, option number 1. I mean, there's plenty of input here, and now we've got input from our community members, and you're going to hear from Laura and myself. So I think the teachers aren't making the decision. Pam's not making the decision. We're making the decision. That's what counts for this community. So I think we got plenty of input.
All right, so let's look at it like this. We have 3 really options in front of us. One option is we don't do anything and stay with what we currently had before. The second option is, which is option number 1, if you want to do that or a variation off of that you feel, or option number 2 or a variation off of option number 2. But we have 3 choices in front of us, and we need to decide as a board where we need to go.
There's still more options. There's still another option where I'd like to see an option 3. I think there's way too much focus here on this fine arts. And let me talk as an economist. We're talking at the margin. I'm talking about the 10% of the kids here that just hate it. And you're going to make them take this course. It ain't going to make them any better. They're just going to hate it. They don't want to get up and do whatever they do in the fine arts class. They'd be much better off, taking some applied arts. So I think the idea of mixing, giving people more and more choices, and letting these courses sell themselves as opposed to forcing everyone in the school to take a class that's extremely difficult to opt out of. And you shouldn't be making people, like my daughter had to take summer school to get this thing out of the way. You're forcing someone to give up their summer to take this course. I don't think is proper. So I think we actually need another option on the table that's less restrictive than 1 or 2. So I say we vote them all down if we're going to vote.
Well, one option could be, the vote really is, do we allow a waiver for this requirement? And, as a board, that is a board question. Yes, there should be a waiver. But then we could kick it back to administration and say, please work on this more to make it more consistent. We could do that. I mean, it's not our job to determine how the class runs or the specifics, but we can just say when a student comes and says, I need another option.
So was your sentiment shared in the ad hoc committees? Because I understand what you're saying.
No, I'm sort of giving it now to the board because that's my job.
Yeah, well, I understand that, but has anybody else elaborated on that viewpoint?
Well, I think
not contesting it because I think there's merit.
Ms. Farley, is she the applied arts? I mean, this whole concept of the concept is expand the choices of this
Right.
as opposed to, just force everyone to do one little thing. And the other thing here is, we heard all these people here, Mr. Baum, everyone, okay, fine arts is great, I'm not saying it's not, but, there is a cost to this. There's a real cost to it. You can't fit everyone, into that square hole, however you want to say it.
We were at that committee, and Ms. Casson said she spends 20 minutes of her English classes getting students computer literate.
Yeah, I talked with Ms.
We need to worry about that. We need to worry that a third of our students are not proficient in math and English. We heard Patty Farley, so when we hear here that nothing else was proposed, no, those were exact words, that instructors in vocational ed are now opening that up so that 2.5 credits is open, and that she thought there was a bias towards art. That's not our words, that was exactly Ms. Farley's words. We heard from the math department that they had planned classes years ago for college readiness in algebra, but they were told there's no money and to put that on hold. We were told that global studies is an important class, but what we heard is that every area recognizes need. That's what we heard, that there's need all over.
I'd like to, if possible, if you're done, I'll shed a little light on this, because there has been time in between the last committee meeting, the ad hoc committee meeting, the committee of the whole. I've had time to talk with some teachers. I think the speech you got tonight from the members of the committee, as well as some other teachers, there was some concern among the teachers that, they were providing information to the board, and then it might have been read between the lines that they were trying to assume that there should be a waiver, or that there was other importance. So I just want to make sure that that's being acknowledged, that that's not leading our decision. I spoke directly to Ms. Castens, who said, yes, it is a concern that she has with some of her students, but she doesn't think that, computer literacy should be something instead of fine arts survey. So I just want to go on the record that I have had follow-up conversations with the teachers. And I think that was some of their concern, that they were there for background information, but they also then want to make sure as they're providing some of that background information, it's not being that they are preferring one way or the other. The same thing, though, I will say is, in my experience of working at 4 different districts, I don't think you're going to be able to get in a room and be able to get teachers to say that they should eliminate one class or the other. And I will support that from what Laura is saying. Every teacher recognizes the importance of their class, and every teacher can show that it can be cross-curricular, that it could teach critical thinking, that it could be applied to real-life skills. So I think the board, in looking at this decision, needs to take that in consideration, that we probably have 100 classes, if not 400 classes on the books that can teach all of those life skills. The way I heard from the board with their direction is that this is an important class. I've heard that from the committee, the board, the community. This is an important class. There's value to it. We should still leave it a requirement, and people should have the right to take it or not, and that there should be some flexibility for those students who need other classes or want to take other classes to pursue other interests. And that's what Pam and I were trying to generate here. I understand there's concerns with the 2 bullet points on the bottom of option 1. I understand that there's a concern about the last bullet point on option 2. What I would think the board would recommend is that you don't need to pick one. It's okay to have all 5 of these options out here. And if we decide, and if I'm hearing from the board correctly, that the last 2 bullets are cause for some concern because that's not consistent with any other class, but then if the kid took 4 years, it aligns with the foreign language thing, requirement for global area and fine arts, that could be a possible option. And I'm hearing that, performing in visual arts is a possible option, that, requiring the 3rd course is maybe going above and beyond, so then let's keep it to where it has to be a performing arts credit and a visual arts credit. That provides our students 5 different options to achieve a year of fine arts credit and makes them more marketable. It provides some additional flexibility, and it provides this board and this administration some more time to go back and review all of our graduation requirements. So I would ask that you think about that. When we say that we're gonna provide a waiver, we don't have to pick one option. For the kid that wants to be a 4-year music, visual arts, or dance student, you know, we align that similar to what we do with foreign language and with the global studies or the other half credit.
So why don't we do this then? Given-
To me, I picture option 2 of the alternatives as not a waiver concept at all. It's a concept that either you take a credit in fine arts, one being a survey course, or you take 1.5 in fine arts.
No, I just said what we would eliminate
That's what
the
that's
third
what that-
bullet.
Right, because, and that comes to the point.
When the intent of a waiver is, this is my understanding, and this is where I think we have some inconsistencies, is that you're meeting the components of that class in another component of the class. That's the whole purpose of Board Policy 6:310. When you're marching in the fall, you're technically getting the physical activity you're supposed to be getting in PE, so you waive the PE course because you're doing it in band, thus it allows you to take another course. And we've obviously historically have said 4 years of foreign language must obviously cover the content of global area studies, or it must obviously cover the content of that 0.5 fine arts credit that we've allowed them to waive that historically. So what I was thinking of with that option too is that these are the areas, there's performing arts, there's visual arts, there's dance. So I was just trying to say, hey, if you want more flexibility, you can cover those components without taking that specific class. So hearing the board discuss and saying it's additional, dance could be considered part of the performing arts. So a student that has interest in both visual and performing arts, or wanted to explore interest in visual or exploring performing arts, could take a semester of each of those, still have a year of fine arts credit, still be getting multiple disciplines, and that kind of relates to the whole idea of a waiver policy, is that you're getting some of that content in another course.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we look at, and I like Kevin's idea about, we're gonna provide 5 options. I think that option 1 would be, to me, option number 4.
Well, I don't think we have to provide the options, Matt. I think we can just vote that we allow a waiver and let it.
How about we not vote on it, and we get a different proposal brought back to us?
But I think we can vote on that we allow for a waiver and let administration decide what would be an appropriate waiver.
Or
Because-
actually bring proposals up for waivers, but he's right, we can vote on this now and
Right.
then vote on the specific waiver proposals later.
Yeah, because the specifics really would be staff work, but
No, they
board work would
wouldn't.
be,
I mean, the recommendations would be, but they'd have to be included in policy 6.310, which means the board would have to agree to amend the policy and approve the policy.
And you
right?
need this now
Okay.
because you got people registering, right?
We do.
yeah, so I think we could, all right, so I think.
What's the concern, what's the general concern with option 1? The last 2 bullets?
So we took the last 2 bullets out with it.
I think it just, in my mind here anyways, it just favors the band. No other one gets advantage off of that one, other than the band.
Well, it says band, choir, visual arts, so the kid that wants to be a 4-year art, painter, drawer, or photography, they would fall under option 1.
Or a choir member who wants to be in 4
4 years of choir.
Yeah.
Right,
And
it kind of
dance.
aligns with the whole 4 years of,
4 years of
Dance,
dance.
too.
Concentration.
Yeah,
Or
we have
dance.
4-year
What do you do for your
dancers.
dance?
Yeah, we have
And,
dancers.
or
Well,
would
the-
language fall in there too?
The
or-
problem is, with that, is especially band members, they're at a competitive advantage of the rest now, because they can waive out of 3 semesters of required courses that, and again, when people look
That
at
is
grade
correct.
point average and all that,
Right.
these are all, they're not honors classes, they're not AP classes, and instead, they can take
Extra
AP
classes.
courses, so well, it gives them a 3-semester class advantage on the grade point average of everybody else in the school.
But on the other
that
hand,
is-
though.
that is accurate.
But on the other hand, too, a student that really wants to focus on AP can, am I right, Pam, could come and ask for waivers off of PE?
No.
To take
No.
No, we don't do
You
that
wanna do it for
anymore.
college?
No,
No,
because it's
not
not
anymore.
specified in state code,
All right.
which is,
So what would you, what are
So
you
what
recommending?
my problem with the, number 1 is it's narrowly tailored, but not maybe for a good reason, because you're saying it's a substitute, to people who already have a competitive advantage from a lot of students here, and it's gonna give them an additional competitive advantage on their alternatives to take courses. They'll have, if they're in the band, they'll have an option of 3 different courses of the required courses they don't have to take now.
Are you including PE with that?
The 2 PE waivers they can get for the spring, the fall, and their junior and senior year.
And freshman.
Well,
All 4 years.
not till, is that still
No, they can get 2 years waived.
2 years waived? Just
Four
Just
fall
two.
semesters.
What about dance?
Yeah.
Only thing they can get waived for P is if you're a marching band in the
The
fall, you
dance
can
is
waive.
PE,
No, you can't get a waiver for that. No.
Right.
but it's
That'd be
treated,
bad.
it's dance treated as PE?
But it's included as option 1, so
Yeah.
if someone wanted to focus 4 years of dance, they could waive out of the fine arts survey.
Well, Tim, isn't it 4 semesters then?
It is
4
a-
semesters or 2 years.
But is dance considered PE? That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay, so then they wouldn't be taking the PE course, they'd be taking the dance course, all right? Which is also giving credit for the,
It would
counting
kind of
both.
knock
So then
out
they-
2 birds in 1
They're getting-
stone.
They
Yeah,
have
counts
5,
both. Right.
they'll have
The
5
advantage
semesters.
of moving
no, 5 semesters, won't they?
Yeah.
the advantage of moving the dance to PE is that it covers both at the same
I
time.
understand the advantage, but then you also have the other consequence of this is that 4 credits in dance, right?
Right?
Which is a PE.
That's PE, so they don't take a second PE course, which other people have to take. They're taking
4 years
They're
of
taking
dance.
2 classes, while this person's only taking 1, right? PE course and, say, for ceramic, sculpture, whatever, I'm just trying to,
I don't know if I agree with that.
if you're taking dance, do you have to take PE?
No.
If you're taking ceramic, do you have to take PE?
Yes.
So what happens if I wanted to become
Then you
a
would
visual
follow,
arts,
you'd want to go to number 2 and just take a semester of dance and semester
but I got an
of
advantage
ceramics.
if I dance, because I'm gonna have 4 credits of not having to take a PE along with that.
It counts as your PE credit
Right.
when you're in dance. But that was the advantage in option 2. If you are somebody that.
But you're also asking them to take an additional, right?
Well, that's why I said
No,
if that's the
not an
concern
additional
of the
dance.
board,
That's the dance you
we would
already
just
took.
do a
PE.
semester of performing and a semester, so it's only 1 credit. Semester of performing and a semester of visual, and not the semester of dance. We can include dance under performing technically.
I gotta tell you, if we did that though, Kevin, now we're in the situation
It's not a waiver.
that we're giving, they still have to take a fine arts, but they don't have to take fine arts survey.
That's why it's not a waiver anymore.
So you're saying they still have to take
Now
a
you
year
just
of fine
change your
arts.
fine arts requirements to
Yeah.
be 2 fine arts courses.
Right.
Yeah. and
That's what I'm trying to get at. This
But
option
isn't
is not
that-
a waiver.
But what I'm saying though is, okay, but my argument to that would be is that the discussion has been is that there's not enough flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
No one's mentioned that we want to lower the requirements of fine arts. And
I might start saying that.
Or if somebody takes 4 years of language.
I'm saying it now,
Yeah.
because I think we need to bring in, as one of our teachers said, we need to bring in this applied arts thing to help the kid with the right-sided brain, if he wants to do some of the applied art stuff instead, to let him do that, instead of forcing him to take this.
Well, there was a
Yeah.
proposal of, the 2 credits and then they could be used different ways. So that was something that wasn't fully discussed or vetted.
Right,
but
we thought we'd bring that back
we'd bring that back.
in the spring. Have the waiver in place and then talk about,
Can I make
Extending
a suggestion, follow up on Matt's, and you're too tight, it seems like there's a consensus and we could get people to say there should be some kind of waiver, but then we're not thrilled about what was being proposed. And can we give the ideas, we'd want you to come up with a waiver that seems more like waiver for more people or
Okay.
whatever, and come up with some other suggestions. I think that's kind of what Matt was getting
Yeah, and I
at.
think we should look at all options, and options to be able to.
I don't think they should be more rigid than what they are
No, I
now.
think if you-
That doesn't seem like we're proposing a waiver. But
So now how you wanna work a waiver, cause they gotta start scheduling classes, so.
well,
the other problem is the proposal, the way I read it, said this wouldn't even take effect until next year's incoming freshmen.
the board has the right,
But that's not what we did. Again, that's kind of contrary to what we did with band.
well, I
We
looked
protected the
at the
current
notes,
students.
I looked at the minutes
Yeah,
from band,
yeah.
and I did look at the resolution. It says it will fully be implemented for the class of 2016. It should be gradually implemented for other students, so it did not directly impact the band students.
Well, but my point is, if we're going to do a waiver, I think it should just take effect
Okay.
on this. And the third thing is, I definitely think we should have the same flexibility in whatever you come up with waivers of the two general type of issues that are addressed with the PE waiver. For the students that need something for higher education, or because if they're failing a class and they need to take one for graduation, I just can't understand why we wouldn't include those two alternatives. Because it's already hard to do. You have to go to the principal to get the permit. It's not like you can just tell your counselor. The principal has to sign off on it.
So let's clarify one thing right now. The waivers, if the board votes tonight and says we'd like to look at waivers or approve waivers, but you guys gotta come back with your waiver suggestions, when do you want this to start? Does it start with the freshmen coming in next year? Does it start with the kids that are registering for next year? And everybody's wondering why I'm doing this. There's a fly around here and I'm trying to kill it, so.
The thought of, see, the impact, it's two different impacts, though. The reason the impact was suggested with the band is because a lot of those students, when they were creating their four-year plan, knew that if they made a commitment to marching band, that they would get these waivers and have more flexibility to take, still get this fine arts survey requirement and be able to take the foreign language and world. So we had to ease that into incoming freshmen, because it would screw up kids that are a year away from applying from college, and all of a sudden now we're telling them you got to take PE, and it would screw up their. With this type of waiver, it would allow students that wanted to still stay in the class and the flexibility of waiving the class to have the ability to. It's a different impact. You're allowing the students to waive something where you're not requiring them to take something.
Yeah, but again, if I take a student, I'll take my son as a sophomore. Now I remember what it is, right? The new rule, they can only waive
The fall
band in the
semester.
fall. The current ones can waive both, right?
Yes.
We're-
The whole
So
year.
now, all of these bands can waive 8 semesters at PE and take.
No, they still have to take health, and they still have to take a semester.
6,
for
I knew it,
6.
6 semesters of PE, right? So I just don't, and it's one course.
Right.
Why we don't want to think about giving the flexibility to a freshman and sophomore and juniors if we're going to change the policy.
I'm saying that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm saying with fine arts survey, you're making them, by having the waiver in place, it's providing them flexibility in the schedule. By changing the other waiver, totally different waiver, it was requiring more.
Right.
So it would throw a hitch in someone that had a 4-year plan already established under the one set of parameters, where this would provide students more flexibility. So you could probably get a way of implementing this waiver sooner instead of saying that it would have to change in a freshman class coming in.
Okay, so let's do this then.
If-
In the
if I-
motion, then we would have.
If I could make one comment about that, and the reason you usually ease this in, is then you have, because this is a class open to all 4 grade levels, you have an unfair playing field in that you change the rules midpoint on some kids. So some kids had already taken it, and other kids now don't have to, and that's why you usually say 1 grade, you know, 1 year, they all get the same advantage, they all get the same options and alternatives. Otherwise, some seniors already taken, now you're taking it away, then they'll say that's not fair.
That
Well,
they'll be
I want to disagree, because
Okay.
it's already been unfair with waivers for global studies. And are you telling me that global studies is a lesser class than fine arts survey?
No, I'm not saying it's a
Then
lesser.
why would they have the same requirements?
Well, I could explain that, is that the reason in the 3rd and 4th year of a language, they're getting the equivalent culture, and, you know, that's why it's equivalent to that other class. So, you know, there was reasoning behind when that was put in. So I'm not putting more value of one over the other, but I'm saying everybody had the option for that and knew it up front and got to plan accordingly at the same time. So I'm just saying, usually when you change graduation requirements or allow different options, you do it for the same class and you ease it in from the bottom up. So it's just something to consider.
But our
Thank you.
waivers have been so inconsistent. I think as it becomes, I think we just have to allow for a waiver. It's a requirement, fine arts survey is a requirement. And unless you come to administration and say, I need this, and have your reasons and the reasons why administration allows that.
All right, so how we do this then? How about we just make a motion to approve the waiver, and we'll let, which will give us give flexibility, and let the administration develop what the flexibility and the waivers are gonna be, and then come back to the board.
Can I suggest we come back on the policy committee,
Okay,
because everybody gets to approve it anyway. We have to amend the policy.
We'll bring that up in the
Unless you
policy.
want it to go to the curriculum.
It's still gonna have to,
first.
we're gonna have to,
Well, can I ask, I'm trying to understand the impact of this, because if I recollect correctly, about, I'm gonna throw it, a quarter of the senior class tends to wait and take the survey in the last year,
out of the,
or a third.
current enrollment
30%.
no,
30.
60%.
Is it
60% of our current enrollment in fine arts survey were seniors.
Yeah, so the purpose of this class, here's another dissidence.
Okay, so now,
Right.
we're gonna waive it, and they're gonna take two
Well, we don't know what.
half semester
Well, we
courses.
don't know what we're gonna do yet, because obviously the board didn't like, so we gotta go
Okay.
back to the drawing board.
No, they
But
don't-
my issue is that, the only thing I need a little more clarification on is that a waiver should be that they're covering it in some other class. So I gotta go back with the administration and leadership council and say, okay, well, some of these other concepts are being covered in what other classes?
See, but my concept of a waiver is not within the same department. I mean, that's where
No,
I've seen
I
waivers.
get that.
But
I
we're
get
not,
what you're
we're
saying.
wavering within the department. And
It's
to me,
kinda
it's not a
hard to say
waiver.
how, that's why I have to go back with the administration and say, hey, where are we studying the history of visual arts? I said, in these history courses, or because how would we waive? That's
Well,
where I'm kinda having a.
Yeah, but I think, like in global studies, if you take 4 years of Spanish, you can waive out of global studies, so they're related, but they're not one for one. So if you have, like, we heard the student here who's doing maybe 4 years of, the movies, or you have somebody who was in 4 years of choir, why couldn't that be a replacement? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I
Ray?
just wanna, I mean, like, if we keep that, then technically we're saying, hey, you gotta take 4 years before you can get it waived out of fine arts survey.
It seems silly that somebody who's got 4 years in something that's a fine art, that's called a fine arts, would then have to take a survey.
all right, so why don't we do this? We all agree that
Well,
we
why?
are in favor with doing a waiver. The type of waivers, we want to throw it back to the superintendent and administration to be able to develop it. But I think what we need to do is to be able to give them the power to have them saying, we are in favor of this waiver, come back, develop it, and then come back with it, just show us what you're doing with the waiver. Would you agree? Would you like that or not? You tell me.
Well, no, I think we still need to vote on final on what the policy will be for what is included in the waiver.
We will.
We will.
We have to.
Yes.
We have
Okay.
to amend the
That's- as
policy.
long as
Yeah,
that's-
yeah. I
it's
just-
clear.
If you look at the motion on page 160, it basically says that we're gonna approve a waiver.
That's it.
That's all.
That's it. And then I just wanna clarify that we're not getting rid of fine arts survey.
No.
It's still a requirement,
Mhm.
and they can fulfill it under current student option 1, 2, or 3.
Yep.
So that's all still in place.
Yes.
Right.
And we're just gonna expand the horizon a little by allowing a waiver that's to be determined coming up through the policy committee, because the policy has to be changed.
If the board,
So, why is there a vote on this tonight?
because,
If-
well, we, here's,
Because
if-
if we
if-
vote it down, none of that work has to be done.
right.
If
And
we
we
vote it
gotta,
down,
we
the
have to
pol-
somewhat expedite this, because you have current
I-
juniors picking courses, so
I
they're gonna have
understand
to.
that, but
they're
we're
gonna have
still
to-
gonna vote on the ultimate waiver.
But it moves.
That could be voted on or
It moves
down.
the conversation forward.
Because we've had this.
We're going over one hurdle, we're not going back.
It's-
So then we can,
Part of your recommendations, Kevin, is going to have to be whether it's bringing up Pam's issue. Is it only going to start with incoming freshmen? Or is it going to be just take effect and it starts next year with everybody? If it's only incoming freshmen, the timing's not as important, right? They're not going to
Correct,
register till
we have another
next
month or two.
February.
We have another month or two, right.
If it's going to take effect with anybody who's going to school next year,
Juniors have already
some
registered,
juniors
right?
already registered, right?
They're picking their classes, yeah.
And she brings up, Pam brings up an excellent point, is that there could be the 60% of those seniors that waited, or the 110 seniors that waited till their senior year, and now if they realize they qualify for this waiver, they get the unfair advantage of maybe taking another AP course and giving them a chance to bump GPA.
Or maybe they get the advantage that they don't have to go to Sunday school and they can take a math class, and they don't have to go to
Summer
community
school,
college.
summer school.
Right, maybe they don't have to go to summer school for this, and they get to take a math class, and they don't have to go to community college for a year, so they can get in their college of choice.
I just want this board to know, like, I'm giving it all to you. That's
Right.
my job.
Yeah,
So when you get a parent that comes
Right.
up here in 6 months and says, we cost their kid the valedictorian because we let them waive out a fine arts survey, and they were on top of it and did it in summer school, and now, that's a realistic concern. I just wanna make sure you're aware of that.
Right, so let's do this, let's just make this motion, vote on it, and do you think you can come back, by committee of the whole with what your recommendations are? Tim, do you think we can meet?
Before the committee of the whole meeting?
I don't know if we
Yeah.
can meet before the committee of the whole. We have the
Try.
school board conference this weekend, and next weekend's Thanksgiving, and then that Tuesday is.
We'll come to your house for Thanksgiving, no problem at all, make sure you make some good dinner. So-
How about at the committee of the whole, we call it a special committee of the whole, give Pam and I some time to work with the administration and think this out a little more.
No, I'd like to approve the waiver today, because we have had this in 5 meetings.
No, no,
Like
no,
John
No, I'm
said.
saying
Not
approve-
Let them
disagreeing
prove it,
with
but then
that.
we're.
Prove the fact that there'll be a waiver, and let us bring it back a little more
Okay.
refined.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody have an issue with that? All right, can I have a motion on this?
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the superintendent's recommendation to allow for a waiver for the fine arts survey graduation requirement as discussed at the Board of Education meeting on November 13th, 2012.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by who? Dan Moon? Any other discussion? Mary Ann?
Mr. Moon?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Gritchen?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Dr. King?
No.
Mr. Cindy?
Yes.